Course is geared toward those preparing to sit the Cambridge TKD exams. It aims to familiarize candidates with the test's content, assessment, and marking, and online face-to-face with teacher. Those are all program we provide. For any further information about our program, you're welcome to visit our website and social media.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to ICAS Webinar 2023. I'm Oko Octaviani, and I'll be your host for today's session. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm delighted to see so many of you here joining us from different parts of Indonesia and Australia. Our session is scheduled to finish at 10:40 Jakarta Standard Time, and I hope all of you can be with us until then. Ladies and gentlemen, to ensure that we're all on the same page regarding ICAS Indonesia, please allow me to share a bit of information about it with you. ICAS is an international school-based competition program held in a number of countries around the world. In Indonesia, ICAS has been conducted since 2005 with the participants of hundreds of schools and tens of thousands of students. After having been postponed from 2019 to 2021, ICAS is now back with an online format and supported by Janison and University of Sydney. ICAS will continue to provide opportunities to the Indonesian students to showcase their potentials in solving high-order thinking skills problems in the subjects of maths, science, English, and digital technologies. Ladies and gentlemen, we have two engaging and insightful sessions ahead, where we will be exploring how to maximize our students' potentials through ICAS. Before we engage in the exciting contents we have planned for you, please allow me to introduce our esteemed speakers. Our first speaker is Nardin Hanna. Nardin has extensive experience in the Australian education system in the primary sector for over 10 years. During this time, she was in curriculum leadership positions, including serving as head of year for K2 in an independent school in New South Wales, Australia. Nardin is also a trained NAPLAN marker, Australia's national assessment program, and was part of the team that wrote the 2021 New South Wales Syllabus 3-6. She is currently a member of the ICAS and REACH team as the assessment consultant for Victoria, South Australia, Tasmania, and New Zealand. Good morning, Nardin. It's an honor to have you here with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
So you're joining us from Australia, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Oh, such an honor. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Our second speaker is Moningka. Moningka is the head of sales at Janison, Australia, with over a decade of experience in education leadership. For the past 5 years, he's been leading growth and business development in the edtech industry. He is passionate about supporting educational leadership and strategic teaching and learning growth, including educational technology initiatives, policy, curriculum design, IT infrastructure, and educational program delivery. As the leader of school assessment consultants at ICAS Assessments, he focuses on empowering school leaders, teaching staff, parents, and students to improve educational processes, performance, and outcomes. Good morning, Hans. How are you?
Good morning. I'm good, thank you.
Oh, no, that's great. You are also joining us from Australia, yes?
Correct, from Melbourne, Victoria.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for being here. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, before we dive into today's webinar, I would love to take a group photo with you. Okay, so because I believe that it is a fantastic way to connect and remember this event together. So ladies and gentlemen, please switch on your camera and put on your best smile. Now, I will have my colleague, Sarah, to take the photo.
Hey, good morning, everyone. Thank you. You can take a photo. We're going to take a photo. So please open the cam. Everyone can open the cam. Okay, and 1, 2, 3, smile. Okay, one more. Open the cam, everyone open the cam. And 1, 2, 3, smile. Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much, Sarah. And thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. You look fantastic. Thank you. Okay, so to ensure that everyone gains maximum benefit from both input sessions, please allow me to share a couple of technical rules. 1, during the input session, please keep your camera switched on and microphone muted. 2, please share your questions during the Q&A session by raising your hand virtually and then unmute your microphone once invited. Ladies and gentlemen, your cooperation in observing these technical rules will contribute to the overall success and productivity of this webinar. Thank you for your understanding and support. Okay, so without further ado, let's get started. Okay, Nardin, the floor is yours.
Amazing. Thank you so much. I'm going to just quickly share my screen.
Sure.
Great. Thank you so much for the introduction. So in today's webinar, we're going to have a look at fostering higher order thinking skills through ICAS. First and foremost, the most important questions that teachers have is, what are higher order thinking skills? So we're going to quickly have a quick recap of them. Basically, they are the ability to think abstractly and make connections between concepts. And so here we have a look at that it's beyond rote learning. So it's not about just teaching students knowledge only, but we're going to have a look at what that looks like. So again, as we said, it's beyond recalling facts and information. It includes critical thinking, analyzing, synthesizing, problem solving, evaluating, and of course, making decisions. And we're going to have a look at each of these examples quite soon. So when I speak to teachers about higher order thinking skills, this is basically the essence of what that is. Within the classroom, it's not about providing answers. So when I was a leader in school, I had a lot of novice teachers that would only think that teaching or good teaching is providing students with knowledge or that they're good to go. But really the essence of really good education is that we allow students to be independent thinkers, that they're able to come to conclusions on their own. And so what we want to do is that we want to teach by asking questions. Basically, we want questions that explore, that investigate, that probe, that stimulate, and that engage. So back when I was a teacher, I used to teach primary students, so young students, and I always used to open the concepts that I teach with a scenario that will challenge their thinking. So for example, I remember one time in science, we were looking at the concept of color perception. And I asked my students, when you go to the beach and you look at the water, what color is the water? And very confidently, they all said blue. So when I said, okay, if I take a clear cup and I take some of that water, if I look at the color of that water in the cup, is it still the same color of blue? And they all stopped and said, no, it's not. So I posed that question, well, why does it look different? You know, you can't say that it's reflecting whatever's beneath it because that's usually sand or rocks, and neither of them are blue in color. And I would always see the faces of my students very confused, but very quickly it will turn from confusion to curiosity and determination and drive to find out the answer. And that's what we should be doing as educators, in that we want them and we instill a passion of lifelong learning for them to find out answers themselves and really have that understanding behind the knowledge. So, of course, when we look at higher order thinking skills, the first thing that we always think about and refer to is Bloom's taxonomy. So here I've got a diagram which starts from the lower order thinking skills at the bottom, and it slowly makes its way up to the higher order thinking skills. So right down the bottom, we have remembering or memory, and that's where basically students can recognize and recall facts. So knowledge is important, and it's the basis of everything that our students will need to know, but there's no denying that it needs to go beyond that. So the next step after memory or knowledge is understanding. So basically, students need to understand what the facts mean. And I used to have a lot of teachers that would ask me, what's the difference between knowledge and understanding? So a quick example that I'd give is, for example, one of my students can recall that 2 times 3 equals 6. That's a multiplication fact that they know off by heart. That's knowledge. But the understanding behind that is that that student is then able to tell me what that means is that is 2 groups of 3, which makes a total of 6, or using commutative property, it is 3 groups of 2, and that equals 6. So it is the understanding that is behind the concept is what actually creates successful learners. And that this understanding is now the bridge to the rest of the higher order thinking skills. Students cannot apply, nor can they analyze or evaluate or create if they don't have that understanding. So it's really important that we teach the whys and we teach the how-tos behind all of the concepts. Otherwise, they'll just remain at that concept. Another example, again, because I used to teach younger students, is teaching them English and teaching them how to read. So I had one of my students who came to me in year 2 and he couldn't read a word. So I asked him to sound it out and have a go. And he kept repeating, "egget." And I had no idea what the student was saying. So I asked him to show me the word, and it was actually the word eight, E-I-G-H-T. And so from his understanding from kindergarten is that he had to sound out every single letter. But if I as a teacher stopped and said, no, that's the word 8, which means the number 8, yes, he would have memorized that word, but then there would be no other understanding behind that. So having understanding takes a little bit of extra effort, but it is important. So I sat with the student and explained that EIGH is a quad graph, which actually makes the sound A, long vowel A. So seeing those 4 letters makes A, so 8. So then they could apply that knowledge to other words like neighbor or 80. And so now as we give understanding to the students, they're able to proceed through the rest of the higher order thinking skills. The next one is then to apply, and I just gave that example there. So once students remember and understand, now they can apply the facts, the rules, the concepts and ideas to a range of questions, situations and scenarios. After application comes analysis, so analyzing. That is now the breaking down information into different component parts. So when they have all of these as a basis, now they can say, okay, I understand this is saying this is saying this, now putting them all together and identifying those parts. The next one is evaluation, so judging the value of information or ideas. And of course, the highest one is creating. They need to combine parts to make a new whole. So they need to have all of these as a basis to be able to get there. Here on my screen, I've just provided one example of a sample question from ICAS. And I'd like to point out how ICAS actually goes through all of the higher order thinking skills. The only thing that we don't touch on, unfortunately, is creating, but we do go through the rest of them. So this is a science sample question, paper B, which is equivalent to the Indonesian Year 5. So it says syrups are thick, sticky liquids. The thicker the syrup, the more slowly it will move down a slope. The graph shows the distance 4 different syrups move down a slope in 1 minute. And the question is, which syrup is the thickest? Now, in the Australian curriculum, we do cover, in terms of, if this is our equivalent E4, we do cover solids, liquids and gases. In liquids, we cover viscosity. So some of our students would probably remember if their teacher actually taught them that. But the best thing about ICAS having a global curriculum is that even if your teachers don't cover these topics within the curriculum, we have enough information in each of the questions for them to be able to read it, to apply the skills, and then to find the correct answer, even without any background information. And that's where we see our highest achievers, because they're able to do that with all of the questions. So here they need to understand what this is talking about, that if syrups are thick, then they're going to be slow. Then they need to apply this information here at the top now to the graph. Young students in particular are notorious at quickly identifying something. Yeah, green fastest, the answer is green, instead of actually stopping to think about and understand or analyzing what that question really is asking. So here the analysis comes in. Okay, if it says it's slow, then I need to understand this is how they moved in centimeters. It will be the slowest one. It will be blue. And then quickly in their mind, that if they do that step correctly, they will evaluate that these are the incorrect answers. So here we can see that in our typical ICAS questions, we do have multi-step problems where they need to use higher order thinking skills. But a lot of the questions that teachers ask is why? Why should we teach higher order thinking skills? And I know as a teacher, your curriculum is already very busy and you're always wearing a million hats and you're doing a million things a day. But it is really important that we take that extra step further for our students. The first reason is that it allows for students to become creative thinkers. So in a world today where we have AI and all of this digital technology, which can do things probably better than we can do, write things and research things better than we can do, it is important that we understand that each of our students come with their own special skills, their own special gifts, their own talents. And it's important that we nurture the creative thinking within each of our students so that way they can become their best selves. The next reason is that they actually become problem solvers. And yes, problem solving in the classroom, doing a maths equation is important. But beyond that, when they have that style of thinking, they're able to become problem solvers in the real world. So for them to be able to make wise decisions in terms of their safety, in terms of their health, in terms of their aspirations and their futures, these are the sort of students we want to build. The next thing is that it allows students to take risks and experiment with solutions. Again, it provides wisdom for them to be able to analyze, okay, later on, hopefully when they grow up and they become successful people, they're able to think about, this is the way I would like to take my path in life. Can I take a calculated risk? And if I do that, what are the consequences, both positive and negative, and end up in a good place? The next thing is that it develops analytical thinking skills, again, not just within the classroom, but beyond the school walls. So within their life in general, how to analyze situations for their safety, for their health, with their relationships, in their successful jobs in the future. Again, it helps them make informed decisions and they're able to tackle challenges. So students with this sort of higher order thinking, they're usually students who enjoy learning and they really put this at the forefront of their mind. So we see a lot of soft skills like resilience that are associated with it. Students who have determination, who have that drive to be able to find answers as well. So last year we interviewed one of our ex-students, this gentleman here in the blue. His name is Adam Ritchie, and our blog is on our website. But this student found his potential through ICAS science and ended up becoming a scientist who developed the COVID vaccine, which saved so many people. But in the blog, he mentioned something really beautiful, which I could not say better. He says, if as your boss, I can Google the answer to something, you're of no value to me. But if I give you a complex question and you can work out how to answer it, that's valuable. And that's exactly what it is for the workforce. This is what we want to see in our students, people who can think for themselves, who can problem solve and bring something to the table. So the next thing that we're going to have a look at, okay, well, what sort of skills can I teach as a teacher in the classroom? The first thing that is important to focus on is the transfer of knowledge. So we want students to be able to apply knowledge and skills to new contexts. And that is allowing them to see the relevance of everything that you're teaching them to the real world. So explaining the reason why I'm teaching you this is because of this. We always teach students how to read and write, but beyond that, reading the time, or in maths we look at measuring or calculating discounts, all of these things that they need in the real world. I used to have a student who used to complain after languages class every week. He used to say, Miss, I'm never going to go to Italy and I'll never need to learn Italian. Why am I doing it? But it's important to show students that even if you're doing something which seems irrelevant to you right now, later on down the track, it might be helpful to you, but your brain is even using different parts as you're learning different skills. And that's really important to embrace each step of the way. The next thing is critical thinking, and that is the ability to reason, to reflect, and to decide what to believe or do next through analysis. So it is really important. I always used to ask my questions, why or why not? And then they would have to give me an answer. They need to critically think. They need to think about the question that I'm posing, but then why should they do it or why should they not do it, and be able to provide that reasoning as well. The next thing is problem solving, and problem solving is meeting a goal that can't be met with a memorized solution. That's a beautiful way by Brooke Hart to explain that. Some students think, okay, if I memorize this, I'm just going to get the answer right. But problem solving is beyond that. It is about, yes, knowing facts, but then applying that and applying skills to be able to figure out the answer. A lot of students, particularly in maths, do quite well because they can simply apply an equation and then they'd score quite well, but then fall when it comes to problem solving. Why? Because now we've got the English language. So we've got English combined with mathematics, which students can't understand that language. So it's important to be able to teach them those skills so that way they're more familiar, more confident with it. The next thing is lateral thinking. So we want to develop underutilized or creative solutions to problems. So here it's about getting students to think in a different way. So even as simple as throwing something out there, for example, I need to escape from a burning building and I only have a balloon and a hammer. How can I get out? Getting them to think about creative solutions. This is what allows them to develop their creativity. And, there could be no right or wrong answer, but they just have to come up with solutions. The next thing is divergent thinking. So here we're generating multiple possible ideas from one question, which is known as brainstorming. So brainstorming is really important because sometimes students or teachers think, there's only one way to do that, which is not correct. There are multiple ways to get to something. So encourage students to share their ideas, share their thoughts, share your ideas and share your thoughts. And eventually, hopefully, one of those methods will actually click with the other students so that way they're able to utilize that too. The next one is counterfactual thinking. So asking what if questions, which is useful for reflective thinking and self-improvement. So I always used to sort of debate with my students, say, okay, what in a situation, what if this happened? And then my students will answer, okay, great, thanks for your answer. But then answer like, okay, but what if this happened? And then they also have to keep thinking about it. So having that counterfactual thinking really develops their critical thinking skills. The next one is invention, which is the hardest. So here they have to create something entirely new. They must have the thorough understanding of the existing knowledge and then have the critical and creative skills to build on it. So you might pose a question to your students, for example, I want you to build or create an invention that folds clothes automatically. So there they have to really put everything together. They have to understand every single aspect, what it has to do, be creative with that, but then also understand, okay, the weight or the size of this machine that I'm creating, the electrical components, everything that needs to go into it to actually create this. There are lots of steps, which is why it is the hardest. The next one is metacognition, and that's thinking about thinking. This is reflecting on thinking processes to seek improvement. which is really important, especially for younger students. So we always used to have times in the class where we'd practice each of these types of questions, and I'd bring up the questions up on the board and I'd get them to work in groups, and then I would take a vote. I'd say, okay, who thought the answer was A, or who thought it was B, C, or D, and then we'd go through all of them, and especially I'd focus on the incorrect answers first. So I'd tell the students, okay, if you thought it was B, who can tell me why they thought it was B? And as they would start to tell me their reasoning behind how they came to that answer, at one point in time they'd stop and think, uh-oh, that does not make sense, and they'd come to the realization that that was the incorrect answer, which is important. And then we'd go through all of them until we find the correct answer. So thinking about thinking is important because it helps them identify if there was an error along the way. And the last one is evaluation. And this is to be able to assess the correctness and the quality of information presented. So I can evaluate something that is correct, but also why it's not correct. So in the classroom, we'd always provide examples to students, but then we'd always provide non-examples. So this is not what it looks like, and this is why this isn't a perfect fit here. So with all these skills, the next question is, well, how can we teach these skills in the classroom? These skills are hard to learn, particularly for younger students. So the most important thing is that you scaffold and that you have modeled instruction, that students will learn from your modeling. When my students, especially when we took votes and I found that all of my students got the incorrect answer, I would say, okay, stop now, listen to my brain. And then I would go through the actual question with them, and then I'd go through my thought process so that way they understand how I got to that, how to get to that answer. Also, when I get them to work in groups to work out the answers, I would tell them, I'd give them a couple of minutes and say, as a group, you figure out the answer. The person thinks it's B. It's important that you explain it to each other until your whole group comes up with a consensus that they've got the correct answer. So there they are encouraged to think in different ways, to listen to how other people are getting to the answer and eventually get to the right one themselves, which will then allow them to be able to take that to independent practice and do that successfully on their own. And it's also important to have mixed ability groups. So having your strong learners with some of your weak learners and some of them in the middle. So that way they all learn from each other. Otherwise, if you've got a whole group of students who are struggling, then it becomes quite tricky and they don't know how to excel from there. So it's about building confidence as well. The next thing is open-ended questioning, and that's really important. Always encourage your children or your students to think and probe them and ask open-ended questions. Why not, how? Get them to keep thinking on their feet instead of just giving them the answers all the time straight away. The next one is active learning and independent practice. So yes, it's important to work in groups because then they get to build that confidence amongst each other, but then also having time to be able to do that themselves. Have a go yourself and let's see how well you can achieve. We also used to do group activities where we do it as a game. So we'd say, okay, if you didn't get that question right, then you're disqualified from here. Let's see which group can actually make it to the end, or even students on their own who can make it to the end. But the students who were disqualified didn't sit and do nothing. I'd encourage them also to do it on the sidelines to see if they can get it correct as well. But then we'd also end up with one winner, which allows for that element of fun competition. The next and most important thing is that you set high expectations as a teacher. All of my students knew there was one phrase I would never allow in a classroom, and that was, I don't know. It was always important that they'd always go and find out the answer. And my students always also knew that I would never accept 100% effort. It's always beyond that 100% where you push yourself a little bit extra. That's where growth is. And when you raise the bar really high for your students, you'll be surprised that some of them can meet you up there. And then that's where they can actually achieve their full potential. When I used to teach my young students writing, I used to show them and model for them how an adult writes and expect that they would get somehow over there. And I used to have students in year 4 and year 5 writing comfortably at a year 9 or year 10 high school level. And they were upset that they fell short from my model, but that's how they were writing, which was amazing. So make sure that you have high expectations for your students. And the last thing is that there are many opportunities to practice. So these skills are required to be practiced on the daily. And this is, I'm going to show you in a minute how ICAS also can go through here, but even something as simple as one question a day. You don't have to carve out huge chunks of your time or your curriculum. It's as simple as using the past papers that we've got for ICAS, using one question every single day. You can do that at the beginning of your lesson, at the end of your day, as a bit of a brain break, as a bit of a competition, but get students familiar with these types of questions, with ways of thinking, with opportunities for these sorts of practice. And then hopefully when it comes to competition day, they are confident and then they actually score well. So here are some of our ICAS sample questions that I've just taken from past years, just so you're familiar with the format of these questions. As we've said, we've got lots of subjects. So this is a sample from the digital technologies paper. So here it says teacher use a spreadsheet. What's the formula? And again, all of these are taken from the equivalent of the Year 5 Indonesian paper. So even from this age, we are looking at really important concepts like Excel spreadsheets, like Word documents, internet, email, all of those things which are really important for the workforce today. So you will be setting your students up for success by allowing them or by exposing them to these sorts of questions. This next one is taken from a maths paper. So this one is which shape does not show 1/4 shaded. For the bright students who already know what 1/4 means, it means equal parts of 4. They'd identify quickly that D is not an equal part, so that's the incorrect answer. But then going through the other ones and making sure that they're correct. So if I move this square here, now it becomes 1 or 4 equal parts. If I duplicate this here, that would be 1 or 4 equal parts. If I move this one up here, then yes, it becomes 1 or 4 equal parts, which is definitely D. So all of these questions that you can simply utilize within your lessons or even just as a standalone question, something that you can do together as a class. This is an example from our English paper. So our English paper does focus a lot on text comprehension. So they'll be able to read the text that are provided and then answer the question. So this is an example of an inferential question. So what encouraged Judy to put her thoughts to paper? There may be more than one correct answer here, but it's about finding the most correct answer. The best thing is that we've actually put so much careful thought into each of our papers, and the way that they're designed is that every single word, even in the text, for students who read fluently and understand and then answer the question, they've just got just enough time to finish that. So this is finding the best of the best students. This is an example from our spelling bee competition. So here there are 8 spelling errors. They need to read the passage and find the incorrect words. So here it's using their knowledge of spelling within context. This is different to some of the other questions which have those words where they need to identify or spell from their knowledge. And this is from our science paper. So here students took these photographs, different spider, fly, snail, etc. They need to use the key below to figure out the scientific name of the fly. So even if a student doesn't know the scientific name of the fly, which we're not expecting them to know, they just need to be able to utilize their skills to follow these questions and then end up at the correct answer. So these are the 5 assessments that we had. And if you're ever curious as to the other types of skills and the knowledge that we have in our questions, here is a link to our question paper page. And also, so for example, if you go to Year 2, you'll be able to see the subject frameworks. So here, the assessment framework for English in particular, you'll be able to see this is what we actually assess. So the text comprehension, writer's craft, syntax, and vocabulary. And this is what we'd ask at an introductory level paper. This is the types of questions for paper A, for paper B, C, D, and it goes in detail. And we have that for all of our subjects, which you can actually align the best way possible. So just like any competition, so if you have a sporting competition, you want to provide training sessions for your students. If you've got the performing arts, you'd always make production notes. And it's no different with ICAS as an academic competition. So practice does make perfect, and it is really important. So the best thing about ICAS is that it gives an opportunity for our students who are high achievers to actually have a platform for the school to celebrate them, for them to be able to have finally a chance to be recognized for what they are actually good at, which is great for them. For everyone else, regardless of their abilities, it's a great important for their life in general. I used to have students who didn't perform so well. So for example, I remember one of my students only scored 6 out of 30 and was quite upset. And I said, that's okay. We're going to practice all of this year until ICAS comes. And your aim this year is to get 7. And that's all it is, because we just want to see improvement. And that year, that student had a goal just to achieve 7. And at the end, they ended up achieving 10. And they were so happy because that was more than what they expected. And then for the next year, you can say, that's it. All right, great. You achieved 10. Next year, let's do 15. And it's about really, it's about seeing growth, and it's about celebrating any sort of achievement that any student has. But yeah, that is high order thinking skills. And I hope this presentation has sort of helped you and inspired you to be able to utilize ICAS in the classroom each and every day. And just on a final note, I do want to say thank you for everything that you're doing. Teaching is a difficult job, and sometimes it is quite thankless. So thank you for everything that you're doing. You're playing a very vital role for our students, and no doubt, I'm sure you're making a very big difference in all of the lives of the students that you teach. So thank you so much, and back to you.
Thank you so much, Nardin. Thank you so much. That was inspiring and insightful. Would you agree, ladies and gentlemen? Very inspiring and insightful, yeah? Thank you so much, Nardin.
Thank you, my pleasure.
Thank you. So ladies and gentlemen, start writing down your questions and then be ready to share your questions, ask your questions to Nardin later on in the Q&A session, okay? So thank you so much, Nardin, for such an insightful and inspiring input session. Ladies and gentlemen, let's join me in welcoming our second speaker, Hans Moningka. Hello, Hans. Okay,
Good
go ahead.
morning.
You may take the floor, sir. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
There you go. You can see my screens now.
Yes, yes, I can. What about the others, ladies and gentlemen? Can you? Okay, thank you. Yes.
Fantastic. All right. So backing up sort of where Nardin finished off, as she sort of very eloquently explained, sort of the nitty-gritty of ICAS in designing all those questions. I want to sort of go over more of a higher level, broad overview of how we can utilize that then to unlock student potential. So for those of you who are not aware of what ICAS is, ICAS competition. Currently, it is being run across multiple nations and also obviously in Australia and New Zealand, which represents the majority of the participants. But the reason why it is so good in unlocking student potential is because it draws over 4 decades of experience. A lot of our team, including the test designers, the assessment consultants like Nardin and myself as well, we're all in education as well, obviously, but also we have had quite an extended career, so to speak, in education. So we've got psychometrician, we've got education consultants, we've got learning platform designers who work in ICAS, even before when it was still in as part of UNSW Global. Which is now already transitioned into Janison and also supported by the University of Sydney currently. As you can see in the next slide, I'll have a sample of the certificate. It began in 1981, but over sort of the last 4 decades, we've now had almost 11 million participating students with over 16,000 schools participating in across 41 different countries. Global academic excellence. Because through ICAS and its recognition of student success, when we give out the medals and the certificates, it provides an objective ranking of performance. So going through what Nardin was saying about all those important questions that you're sort of fighting through each day as a teacher in terms of student growth, knowing where your students sit across a whole nation or across just the whole classroom is such a good insight. And I'll go over that in sort of the later slides as well. But what it does is it encourages the students to attain greater academic success, because when you can show growth, when you can show relevant rankings and success through the certificates, you can then encourage them to attain greater success. And it also requires, as Nardin already very thoroughly explained as well, it requires them to think beyond the classroom. A lot of the time, sometimes when we're inside that sort of mindset of teaching curriculum or subject matter or key areas, we're thinking within the classroom, and ICAS forces the student into higher order thinking skills. Just to sort of elaborate more on the global side of things, it is an international recognized program as supported by the University of Sydney, like I mentioned. To that point, they will be appearing in all of the certificates as well as a lot of the collaterals that we are producing as well. We have an exclusive partnership with the University of Sydney, which now supplements this prestigious competition with for the national curriculum and also enriches your school academic program. And I'm hoping I'm talking to a group of people who are already participating, or if not, then we welcome you to be participating with ICAS in Indonesia, because what it does is it enhances the reputation of Indonesia as a growing educational country, particularly in the Southeast Asia region. Sitting in ICAS test, as I already mentioned, recognize academic performance. So it provides an opportunity for the students to stretch themselves teaching within the classroom. When you get the results as well, it allows you to understand your students' strengths and learning needs, because what it does is it gives you insight. So it empowers you with accurate data so that you can sort of tweak and adjust your lessons accordingly, and therefore unlock that potential that we so desperately want the students to achieve. And lastly, from ICAS also filters through the things like school scholarships or studying abroad opportunities or entrance to tertiary institutions. So that is some of the feedback that we've had from our schools as well. Now, in terms of the breadth of the subjects, ICAS provides the most comprehensive suite of academic competition. It does this across 6 literacy and STEM subjects. So you've got mathematics, English, science, writing, digital technologies, and spelling bee. And every single one of this subject allows you to unlock the students' sort of abilities in focusing on different areas of life. And I'll go over that in a second, because each subject addresses a particular key area. Now, some of the questions that we've been asked in the past includes things like whether this is pertaining to a particular curriculum. It is broadly attached to the Australian and New Zealand curriculum, which is the basis of it. Although, having said that, because we have to put in those critical thinking skills, those higher order thinking skills, that allows us to sort of branch out a little bit more than just those curriculum standards, which means that you got more. Because it forces creativity and imagination in terms of analyzing and solving those complex problems. As I already mentioned, the questions are developed by our test creation team on a year-by-year basis. The questions are never the same, and they're all done by industry accredited team, and including psychometricians and former teachers. So in terms of the key areas, you've got mathematics and English as the sort of backbone of literacy and numeracy. As the foundation of STEM, mathematics allows students to access that fundamental part of human thought and logic, and it provides the crucial building block for academic success, along with English. ICAS mathematics focuses on skills such as logical reasoning, problem solving, and critical thinking. It doesn't just help students perform well in subjects such as STEM, but also underpin key areas of our daily lives, particularly as we delve into sort of consumers, money, media, and it covers mathematical learning areas such as numbers, arithmetic, algebra, patterns, chance and data, measures and units, space and geometry. These are all key areas that are focused on in ICAS mathematics. You've then got English as well as the sort of the second half of that backbone, and it is quite important because English is arguably the most important language in the world at the moment. It is considered the world's global language as currently, and as such, ICAS English are designed to focus on skills that includes everyday literacy, critical and creative thinking. They also underpin every other area of academic, social, and professional life, because if you want to expand your horizons, you will have to learn English, as you have to admit, whether or not you're going to any particular part of the world, having English is such a key thing. The ICAS English assessment consists of questions that are written and reviewed every single year by expert educators, and that and grammar, structure, and voice. Each paper are carefully graded because they need to stimulate interest. They need to cover a wide range of ability, as well as gifted and talented students. So I've got such a wide-ranging question that allows us to sort of focus on not just a particular group of students, but the lower end, middle end, and also the higher end of the student. And that is why English is such the most intricate subject, I think. And that's why we've also got additional subjects in ICAS to support English in writing and spelling, because it is such a broad subject that we need to have sort of more support in that. So writing, as I mentioned. So the first two is kind of a bit more important than the others, in my opinion, but the rest are sort of as equal, if not more than that in some circles. So particularly if you're a science teacher, I don't want you to think that science is by any means lesser or less important than English or maths, because science, particularly recent times like the pandemic, really focuses us to acknowledge that science is more important and relevant than ever before. The underpinning of ICAS assessments is skills such as experimentation, empirical observation, logical reasoning, scientific analysis, and critical thinking. Because a lot of the students, particularly in Australia, don't have specific science subjects in the younger years. It is something general subject learning within the primary classroom in Australia and New Zealand, for that matter. And so it is such a new and interesting prospect in focusing on these items that I mentioned in terms of empirical observation and critical thinking particularly, because they are not something that is scientifically addressed at a curriculum level in some of these lessons. Through ICAS science, students will encounter a variety of questions, and a lot of the times, just like the sample questions that Nardin has shown, it relies on real scientific stimulus materials because it needs to test the students' skills of observing and measuring, interpreting and investigating, predicting and concluding, as well as reasoning and problem solving. So whether it is test tubes or pictures of levers that they have to adjust, everything focuses on real scientific stimulus materials, and that is something that's quite different in terms of science. Now, writing is something that is not offered in Indonesia, I believe, currently, but it is a part of the broader ICAS offerings, and it is something that is focusing on thoughtful planning, creativity, critical and reflective thinking, particularly around the marking criteria of textual, grammars, genre, and syntax and punctuation. Now, rest assured, even though you don't have specific access to writing, a lot of these areas are also covered in the English and the spelling side of things because it is part of that English trilogy, if you like. So you've got the last two subjects of spelling and digital technologies. Spelling is something that always gets left behind in some classrooms because a lot of the time it doesn't require comprehension apart from the fact that you have to understand the word before you start using it and spelling it correctly. But in terms of the spelling knowledge, when you look at a word, a student visualizes the word, sounds out the word phonologically, but also using parts of it to build word families, which is morphemic. And when you look at the root sort of word of a particular word, whether it's Greek or Latin or anything along those lines, the etymological side of words and word history is also very important in terms of recognizing how that word is derived and originated from. Some of the examples of these difficult words that are used in ICAS spelling includes grammatical words, homophones, things that are commonly confused like past and past, or quiet and quite, or stationary and stationary. Some of these are sort of very mildly different and often confuse a student, even in Australia, more so than not with some of the Asian regions, because it is such an everyday word in English that they use that they tend to get confused more than a country that has to learn the language itself and sort of learn it as a vocabulary. There's also vowel consonant trigraphs like frightened or courageous. There's also single and double consonants that often can confuse students as well, like happy, disease, accommodation. Some of those sort of next to each other vowels or consonants, when you've got like repetitions, can be quite confusing, and so requires very, very careful and conscious knowledge of knowing the word. Last two, they're multiple affixes like unkindly, so you put the un and the li at the end, or insignificance, so you're sort of affixing multiple prefixes and suffixes. Foreign words, so words that are borrowed in sort of language, so you've got a lot of borrowed words, for example, in Indonesian from English, that you sort of naturalized. Same thing in English. English also uses borrowed words from other languages that are naturalized into English, like pizza from the Italian word, and also bazaar from France, and garage and all that sort of thing. So some of these foreign words are also quite important because it is not a natural English word. And lastly, digital technology. So digital technologies is quite an interesting one because Nardin mentioned earlier about sort of the influence of AI and things like this that are currently very modern, I suppose. And digital technologies kind of start the students on that journey towards that realm, because we might be preparing students for jobs that are not existing, right? So we're needing to think a step ahead, and digital technologies allows us to sort of prepare the students for that as well. So in the digital world currently, the use of phones, computers underpins how we communicate, learn, work, and just like navigating our everyday lives. So by virtue of understanding how to use technology, that can, open up opportunities of working IT, or improving online safety, making learning more efficient. And like I mentioned earlier, sometimes it might just be a prerequisite for us living our lives in this digital age. So if that's something that's particularly lacking, look forward to when a student participate in digital technologies, and so that unlocks that door for them. So in terms of word processing, spreadsheet, database, graphics, multimedia, and something as simple as using the internet and email and programming for that matter. I'd like to also talk about the student insights, because that is something that is quite useful in terms of being able to look at some deep dive into data that shows the student's strengths and weaknesses. So ICAS will evaluate the performance of a student across the state and nation, and internationally. So in the context of Indonesia, you will be compared against the region of Indonesia, but also having some insights into how the student performed individually. Again, filter by skill area, but what it allows you to do is you can discover untapped potential, because the data that you get from ICAS will allow you to develop engaging lesson plans that can extend the students or support the students if they require further support in a remedial way, may help you with parent-teacher interviews or end-of-year student handovers when they go on to the next year level. And particularly for parents as well, they can get an insight into how the student performed in the classroom, and the graphs reveals this information as well. So when you get your ICAS online result, this allows you to look at the summary of the student performance as an overall grade, but also how they perform in each strand of that subject test. This gives you comparative achievement to the region in Indonesia, and also if you happen to have students in that 1% that gets the high distinction and also qualifies for a medal as the top performer and pass that sort of threshold of high achievers, then yeah, that's when you know that the student has outperformed the remaining students of that region in Indonesia. One thing that you will also notice is when we publish our results as part of a whole global family of ICAS, this brings Indonesia and yourself to the whole world. So when you get your results, and I know that there are particular certificates or awards that can look a bit more sort of familiar than others, but whatever you get, whether that's a distinction, a certificate, or most medals by a school, that puts you on the global map. That puts you internationally as a school that has participated in ICAS across millions of students and thousands of schools across Australia, New Zealand, Indonesia, obviously, Brunei, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, Hong Kong, Macau, Singapore, Malaysia, and the region. So it's something that goes beyond what you would think you would achieve based on just something that you sort of look at in a school or even in Indonesia. So I would really welcome if you are not already participating to participate that. And if you are already participating, good on you. I congratulate you and your school and your students and your parent community, because like I said, that's put Indonesia on the world map. Thanks for your time.
Thank you so much, Hans. Thank you so much for such invaluable insights. So yes, ladies and gentlemen, let's put Indonesia on the map, on the world map. Okay, thank you so much. So ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your attention during the imposition. I hope you have written a lot of questions for our esteemed speakers, Nardin and Hans. Because we have now come to the Q&A segment, where you have the opportunity to ask questions and engage directly with our esteemed speakers. As informed earlier, please virtually raise your hand, and then we will invite you to unmute your microphone to allow you to speak directly to the speaker. By the way, ladies and gentlemen, we kindly request that you keep your questions concise and relevant to the topic to allow you to make sure that we use our best the best use of our time together. Okay. All right. So without further ado, let's begin the Q&A session. Any raise of hand? Anybody? Let's have a look. Okay. Okay, Ibu Feni Ho. Go ahead, Ibu. I think your microphone is still muted.
Hi, good morning. Can you hear me now, Miss Octaviani?
Yes, loud and clear, Ibu Feni. Go ahead.
Yes, all right. Okay, thank you for the info session, Mr. Hans and Miss Nardin from Aussie. Allow me to introduce myself. I'm one of the ICAS from Binus School Bekasi from 2022. Usually we conduct ICAS when it's paper-based. We have an extra booklet. Then we can use the extra booklet for our training session for the next year. So however, during the 2022 is via Janison website. So we could not really like check whether the students like we cannot do follow-up whether like if let's say we have the question paper, then we can, after the assessment, we can check which part that they do not understand, then we can help explain so they can perfect if you have the past paper from 2022, so that we can help prepare the students for this year. So that's the first question I have. Then if it not, I heard the 2020 and the 2021 is also not available, am I right? The past paper. So let's say if it's via Janison website, what we do when we join the GSMO, which is also via website as well, what they do is they download it as a PDF and then they will sell it to the school or give it to the school, I guess, in Indonesia. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ibu. I'm afraid that your voice was a bit static on my end. What about on yours, Hans and Nardin? Was it the same?
Yeah, it was cut off a little bit, but I think I understand the gist of the question. Would you like me to respond to that?
Yes, please. Thank you so much.
Yeah. So you're correct. In the past sort of 3 years since we digitized the lessons or the assessments, I should say, that we haven't made the past paper available for those years. And it is because of some of the questions are now interactive. So previously when it's on paper based, it's all static in terms of images, etc. Now that it's online, there's things that you can drag or you need to move things or click on a particular area on the picture. It becomes harder for us to sort of digitize, paperize this. However, and this is something that I would talk about with Pak Dedi and the rest of the team at UTC, we are hoping to make some of the older past papers available, as you mentioned, whether for usage at the school. There's also something that we're in the process of creating, and that's called RISE. It is a test platform because, like I said, the nature of the digitized items, students can sort of register or subscribe to RISE and have sample or practice questions within an app, so they could actually do that within RISE. So stay tuned. I'm hoping sooner rather than later we can sort of progress that a little bit more. We're just sort of ironing out a few details, but that is something that is actually will be brought up with UTC.
Thank you so much, Hans.
Thank you, Mr. Hans.
Thank you. So did we answer your questions? It's clear now? Okay, all right.
Hopefully, yes.
Hopefully, yes.
Yes.
Amen,
yes.
amen, amen.
We'll wait.
Okay,
We'll wait. Hopefully, UTC will come up with something soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Ibu. And later on, we will also post our contact. So if you'd like to have a one-on-one session with us, we can do that. We can always arrange that at your convenience. Okay. All right. Let's move on to the next one, which is Ibu Suwarni. Go ahead, Ibu.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. This is my voice like this. Yeah, this is normal.
Oh, it seems like
so not the,
Ibu.
yeah. This is not about the signal, but
you have a beautiful voice, Ibu.
Oh, thank you very much. Okay. My name is Warni. I'm from Sekolah Harapan Bangsa Modernil. Actually, before during offline, using paper, my school always join ICAS. But for during online, this is the first time we are rejoin again.
Welcome back.
Yes, thank you very much. Yeah, maybe we need assistance to guide the student. Most of parents ask about we have trial first for this year. So if we already know the trial, maybe the participant will be in grade 2. Actually, this is good. I know that package good for students, but with the new method using online, school have a little bit difficulties because if we are using the computer lab, we have limited seat. But if student must wear the laptop from home, that's quite difficult. Maybe the technique about the how to do the ICAS can be make it more easier. Example, student can often do it online at home like that. That's just the suggestion. Thank you very much. And also one more that's maybe for the input for ICAS team. Maybe it's better if we get the same frame of work, the frame curriculum of ICAS that completely example, not only the basic number, geometric, but more in detail. So teacher can prepare the student because our curriculum different. And we also want that the student can do the ICAS as good as they can. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ibu Suwarni. Who would like to answer the question, perhaps Hans or Nardin?
Yeah, I'm happy to jump in there. I'm sure the team at UTC would also be more than happy to support you in terms of doing a trial session or giving you advice on how best to conduct the session. A couple of things that I'll bring in sort of in line there is you can have a combination, like different combination of students sitting the assessments, as long as it's within that same subject week. The other thing as well is there are sample questions that are available on our website. So if you're worried about whether the device is ready to use or not, there's technical readiness sections in the website that you can use. And also, like I said, if you go into the sample question section, it actually allows you to almost replicate how to sit the test. So the student joining in and then clicking on answering a few questions, that allows you to kind of do a bit of a test run of how the ICAS online will happen. Secondly, within the ICAS websites as well, if you go to the subjects section, there's actually the assessment framework available for all of our subjects and for all of the year levels as well. So if you'd like to have a more detailed list of what each ICAS subject in each year level does, the assessment framework will give you that.
Thank you so much, Hans. Thank you. All right, Ibu Suwarni, is it clear now?
Yes, thank you very much. I will try to open it first, and maybe if need some information, I will contact the committee directly.
Thank you so much, Ibu. Thank you for your question and input. Thank you so much. Okay, next up is John Ray. Go ahead, sir.
Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
Yes.
Good morning.
All right. Good morning. I believe that it was last year that it was the first time that ICAS was conducted online, right? Yes, it was online. However, could we also, if it's possible, that our school wanted to have a PDF copy of the questions that were actually been asked through online? And the second question, will there be a specific date for us schools to or institution to, be updated of the date the ICAS result will be released? Because it actually took for few months to get the result of the ICAS, and I did expect that it will be the result will be released like after a month, but it took like a few months. So will there be a specific date for us institution or schools to get the result clearly, so that we can also inform the students and so the parents when will they get the result?
Thank you so much. So it's past paper and then the specific date of the ICAS result.
Yep. I'll take that again. So on behalf of Janison, the first I would like to say is apologies to the delay last year. There was an issue with the way the result was collated. And unfortunately, this only happened for the Indonesian region. So we did an extensive test towards the end of last year across all of our regions, just to make sure that it wasn't the case with everyone else. And we confirmed that it was apologized for it. There was an error in the way that the result was interpreted, which means that the issue with the delay was we needed to do a few rounds of checks to make sure that the student results were correctly accepted, and also the fact that the numbers were calibrated correctly, so everyone got the certificate that they deserve. There was some inconsistency, which means that we don't know, for example, whether a student is actually a distinction or a high distinction or a credit. which means that we have to recalibrate the result quite a few times to get that. So we sincerely apologize for that. I've been told by the team that that should not happen this year, definitely, because we've corrected the issue. So we're confident that it won't happen this year. And if everything goes smoothly as expected, you should be able to receive the sort of the results online within sort of 2 weeks of the test being set. So if you set the test at the end of the period, you will wait no longer than 2 weeks if everything goes smoothly. Obviously, the certificates will take longer because we have to print it in Australia and then send it over to UTC to then distribute it to your school. So that will take a little bit longer just yet. But I think that's worth the wait, because then you might be able to join the ceremony that UTC so gracefully conducted last year. I was actually privileged enough to join that ceremony last year, or earlier this year actually. So yeah, that was
so
really,
much.
really good.
So results should be received in 2 weeks, and a certificate a bit longer than that. Yeah, thank you. Okay, has anyone got any other questions? We still have some time for more questions. Okay then, no? All right, so then if you have more questions later on, feel free to contact us directly. We will post our contact in the chat box in a minute, okay? Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen, for your questions and input as well as feedback. Thank you. Now, ladies and gentlemen, since we have noticed an increasing number of participants joining us midway through the webinar, we would like to kindly ask you to have another photo session with us. Is that okay, please? We just love pictures, that's why. So please switch on your camera and again, put on your best smile, okay? Shall we? Sarah, could you lead the session again?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. You can open the cam.
Okay. Sarah, you're muted.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, look at the camera and say ICAS, and 1, 2, 3, ICAS. Okay, one more time. Look at the camera and say ICAS. 1, 2, 3, ICAS. Okay, that's all. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you so much, Sarah. Thank you. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. As we are near the end of our webinar, I would like to express my sincere gratitude to all of you for your participation, insightful questions, and valuable contributions throughout this session. We hope that you found today's webinar to be informative and engaging, and that you gain valuable insights on how to maximize our students' potentials through ICAS. And remember, put Indonesia on the world map. Now, Hans and Nardin, thank you so much for sharing your expertise and knowledge with us today. Your insights have been truly invaluable. Thank you so much.
Our pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. I would also like to express our appreciation to UTC ICAS and Janison ICAS Assessment for their support in making this webinar possible. As we come to the end of this event, please take a moment after the session to fill out the ICAS Webinar 2023 feedback form. The link should be posted in the chat box by clicking the link in the chat box and or scanning the QR code that you see on your screen. Ladies and gentlemen, your feedback is essential in helping us improve our future webinars and provide you with the best possible content. Once you have shared your feedback, ladies and gentlemen, we will send you your certificate of participation to the email address you provided in the registration form. The last thing I would like to share with you is the sitting date and registration date. So so we will show that on the screens in a minute. So hold on. Okay, so for mathematics and digital technologies, sitting dates is from the 4th of September until the 12th of September. And the registration closes on the 18th of August, 2023. For English and Science, the sitting dates is from the 11th until the 19th of September, 2023. And the registration closes on the 18th of August, 2023 as well. Okay, so if you have further questions or need additional information, please don't hesitate to reach out to us at the email address and WhatsApp number posted in the chat box. Once again, thank you for being a part of this webinar. We look forward to welcoming you to our future events. Thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful day. Bye-bye. Thank you, Nardin and Hans.
Thanks so much for having us.
Thank you.
So you can keep me inside the pocket of your ripped jeans, holding me closer till our eyes meet. You won't ever be alone. And if you hurt me, that's okay, baby. Only words bleed inside these pages. You just hold me. I won't ever let you go. Wait for me to come home. 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 Oh, you can fit me inside the necklace you got when you were 16, next to your heartbeat where I should be. Keep it deep within your soul. And if you hurt me, well, that's okay, baby. Only words bleed inside these pages. You just hold me. I won't ever let you go. When I'm away, I will remember how you kissed me under the lamppost back on 6th Street, hearing you whisper through the phone. Wait for me to come home.